The heat was unbearable, and the sulphurous heat melted my senses as I fell through a tunnel of sharp rocks and living shadows. I don't ask you to believe me immediately, but I beg you to listen very carefully to every word. Subscribe to our channel of God's Wonders and like it to protect yourself from what you are about to hear, for the vision revealed to me in the depths of eternal torment will shatter the blindfold of idolatry that covers this generation and make you tremble with fear. I will not tell you a fairy tale, nor an ancient parable invented by men. I will reveal to you the final fate of that man whom millions called God in the stadiums of the earth, that great idol of sport who lifted golden cups and stirred passions, while the whole world knelt at his feet in profane worship. My name is Matteo, and I was a sports journalist who lived breathing and worshipping the figure of this giant of football. For 40 years, my only religion was football, and my only altar was the green pitch. I defended his excesses with my own voice and justified his horrible sins because I believed that his enormous talent with the ball made him untouchable before divine law. But the justice of the Creator doesn't look at medals, trophies, or the fame of this rotten world. One cold November night, a sudden heart attack violently ripped me from the world of the living. I felt my sinful soul being torn from my mortal body with indescribable violence and pain, and in the blink of an eye, I found myself standing in an immense abyss of molten fire and smoking rocks. Suddenly, an angel of radiant and majestic light appeared beside me and firmly took my arm. He told me not to fear, for I had been granted, by divine grace, the opportunity to see the hidden truth in order to warn the living about this great deception. We walked along narrow ledges of burning obsidian, while the heartrending wails of countless souls filled the heavy, reddish air of the underworld. The majestic angel led me to a vast plain of burning ash, where thousands of gigantic demons with bat-like wings and twisted horns were whipping an immense crowd. I approached, trembling with terror, and saw that this weeping crowd was wearing the jerseys of their favorite soccer teams. They were pure, blind worshippers who had placed a sinful man above the supreme creator of the heavens, and in the exact center of that lake of despair and fire, I saw an enormous throne made of rusted chains and soccer balls enveloped in inextinguishable flames. On that dreadful throne sat he, the untouchable idol, the supposed king of the fields who moved so many crowds. But there was no longer any glory or arrogance on his face, disfigured by anguish. His expression was one of utter terror, and he begged, weeping for a single drop of fresh water to quench his eternal thirst. The horrible demons mocked his earthly victories and forced him to relive every moment of pride and every step he took away from the light. The radiant angel gazed at me with eyes filled with profound sadness and told me that talent is a beautiful gift from heaven, but extreme idolatry is the deadly poison that condemns the soul forever. I couldn't stop weeping at the sight of the legend I so loved reduced to a mere specter of eternal pain. The idol cried out in despair, begging forgiveness from the heavens, but in that terrible place, the time of grace had already ended. Every applause he received in life had miraculously transformed into a painful, fiery lash. Every chant from his devoted fans echoed in his mind like a deafening thunderclap, causing him unbearable mental torment. The angel explained to me in a solemn voice that those who demand to be treated as earthly deities pay the price for their arrogance in eternity without rest. And it wasn't just him who suffered in that harrowing torment, but I also saw all those fanatics who, blinded by sporting devotion, ignored their families and abandoned their faith to follow a mere mortal. I saw desperate parents who had spent their children's bread money on expensive stadium tickets, weeping tears of lava as they acknowledged their fatal mistake. I saw entire crowds marching in chains toward the deep abyss, repeating the stadium chants, but now in a tone of perpetual lament and horror. Darkness itself seemed alive and fed voraciously on despair. Of all those who traded heavenly glory for a piece of gold metal and a few minutes of fleeting fame, I felt my own spirit fading before the magnitude of such infinite punishment. The angel held me tight with his radiant hand and told me to pay close attention to the terrible details, because my sacred mission was to return and tell the world that the true idol is not the one who chases a ball, but the one who gave his pure life on the cross of Calvary. The idol on the throne of chains tried to reach me with his burning hands, pleading with me to carry an urgent message to the earth. He begged me to tell his millions of followers to stop worshipping him immediately, to burn their idol-stained shirts, and to seek the face of the immaculate Creator before it was too late. But his sad words were brutally interrupted by the deafening roar of the demons who fed on his fallen fame. The angel raised his hand and a blinding celestial light drew the creatures from the shadows for a brief moment of peace, allowing me to see the infinite depths of the abyss where other famous figures lay, whom humanity idolized in vain every day, singers, actors, and leaders who once believed themselves immortal and who now shared the same fate of tears and gnashing of teeth. The heat melted my thoughts and sadness overwhelmed me as I realized how many precious souls are lost every second because of this false, sporting worship, and that is why you must listen very carefully and not be deceived by the false glimmers of worldly and earthly fame. Subscribe to our channel of God's Wonders and like this video to protect yourself from what you are about to hear next and prepare your fragile heart because the second part of this terrifying spiritual vision will show you the specific and horrendous punishment received by those who promote this mass idolatry through corrupt media. The angel took me again by the illuminated arm and we began to descend slowly down a huge incandescent stone staircase to an even deeper and darker level of libido, where the silence was far more terrifying than the high-pitched screams and where the true and raw nature of the deception was revealed in all its ghastly spiritual reality. I felt my fragile breath being cut short and that the vision of the bottomless pit would completely absorb me into the blackness. We descended that colossal staircase of living rock, while the heat increased in such a bestial way that I felt my very soul was going to evaporate into the shadows. The angel of celestial light walked before me radiating a peace that contrasted terribly with the shrieks of pain that echoed off the black obsidian walls. We arrived at a cavern so immense that the end could not be seen, and the floor was covered with boiling mud that bubbled with a ghastly and nauseating sound. There I saw thousands of men and women dressed in elegant suits and fine ties that were now stained by the mud of eternal suffering. The angel indicated with his radiant hand that I should observe these people closely, for they were the great communicators of the earth, the sports journalists and the owners of the television networks who had fabricated the image of the football idol we had just seen on the throne of chains. Their mouths were open in a silent scream because heavy red iron microphones hung from their lips. Burning them without consuming them, I approached, horrified, and saw a famous sports news presenter whom I myself had admired in life and who had died some years ago. This man was weeping bitterly as he tried to tear the fiery microphone from his hands, but the chains forced him to continue speaking and telling lies about the false god of the stadium. The majestic angel looked at me with an expression of divine justice and explained that those who use the gift of speech to lead the masses astray into earthly idolatry will receive their just reward in the valley of eternal deception. Every time these presenters, in their lifetime, exaggerated the idol's exploits and called him immortal, they were stealing the glory that belongs only to the supreme creator of the heavens. And for every soul they convinced to worship a mere mortal of flesh and blood, they now had to bear the weight of a boiling rock on their backs. But what I saw next will chill the blood in your veins and forever change the way you turn on the television in your home to watch a game, because in the center of this disgusting mud cavern stood an immense tower built of broken televisions and giant screens that emitted a sickly red light. On those screens were projected incessantly the images of the fans on Earth, who at that very moment were fighting and hurting each other in the stadiums to defend the jersey of their fake team. The convicted executives and journalists were forced. They stared without flinching at the cursed fruit of their unbridled ambition. They watched as entire families were destroyed by sports betting and as young people lost their lives in street fights, defending the colors of a club that offered them no eternal salvation. The pain these media personalities felt upon seeing the harvest of their greed was a psychological torment 1,000 times worse than the fire that melted their feet. A gigantic demon with the face of a vulture and sharp claws stalked among them, lashing the mud with a whip of rusty wire and laughing uproariously at their desperate cries. The angel of pure light took me by the shoulder and told me that fame on earth is a very cheap currency that the enemy uses to buy priceless souls. I remembered my own days as a sports journalist when I would spend hours debating useless statistics and completely forget to read the sacred word of the Creator at home. I fell to my knees on a dry rock, weeping tears of deep regret, because I understood that I, too, had been part of that infernal machine of empty worship. The angel tenderly lifted me up and told me that my life had been spared for a greater purpose and that I should burn every detail into my memory to awaken the sleeping church. We walked along the edge of the immense lake of boiling mud as the wails of the famous broadcasters faded slowly into the dark distance. We entered a narrow passageway where the walls seemed to breathe and throb as if they were alive and made of rotting flesh. The stench of spiritual death was so strong that I almost lost consciousness. But the angel's light kept me grounded and aware of my terrifying surroundings, and if you think this is terrifying, prepare yourself, because the angel showed me the dark pact that lies behind the great world trophies and the golden cups that blind men. We left the passageway and stepped onto a plain covered in a strange, shimmering black crystal that reflected our footsteps. In the distance, I saw an immense inverted pyramid floating above a bottomless abyss, from which I descended in cascades of molten, burning gold. The angel revealed to me that this demonic structure represented the greed of the great international tournaments, where millions of people surrender their energy and spirit to the false god of entertainment. I saw shadowy figures desperately scaling the black crystal walls of that pyramid, trying to reach gold coins falling from above, but each time their greedy hands touched the gleaming metal, it transformed into fiery scorpions that stung them and caused them to plummet back to the bottom of the abyss in an endless cycle of agony. They were the high-ranking officials and owners of sports clubs who, in life, sold their souls and those of their followers for economic power and worldly prestige. The angel warned me that the Creator of the heavens does not abhor wholesome recreation, but he does condemn with all his fury when the heart of man builds idols of clay and places them on the altar, sacred to worship. I watched in astonishment as those men who on earth traveled in private planes and slept in luxurious mansions were now treated like mere miserable insects by the dark entities that ruled that corner of the underworld. Suddenly, a powerful tremor shook the crystal plane, and a deafening roar that came from no known beast made me cover my ears in despair. The angel raised his sword of radiant light and ordered me to prepare to witness the fall of the great false idols of humanity and truth. Behind their supposed miracles on the field, the reddish sky split in two, revealing a chasm from which rained soccer balls transformed into fiery meteorites that impacted directly upon the heads of those leaders. Corrupt, I saw how the Grand World Cup stadium we all admired on television was nothing more than a cheap model compared to the architectural prison the enemy had designed for them. The stands of that prison were made up of millions of empty eyes staring at them, judging every stolen coin and every bribe paid under the table to win rigged championships. A huge demon with bronze scales and eyes like torches approached a famous white-haired leader who was weeping uncontrollably. The demon forced him to swallow a wad of blood-stained banknotes while reminding him in a thunderous voice of all the poor families who had been dispossessed of their lands to build their immense stadiums. I felt a lump in my throat at the sight of the perfect, yet implacable, divine justice, unfolding before my eyes without mercy, because in hell there are no shortcuts that can buy spiritual freedom. The shining angel told me in a grave voice that every second we spend worshipping a mortal in front of the television is a second we steal from eternity in our sacred salvation. The plane of black crystal began to crack beneath my feet, and a nauseating heat rose from the depths, heralding the arrival of an even darker entity. The angel covered me with its wings of immaculate light to protect me from the gusts of toxic wind that carried the laments of millions of young people lost in extreme vanity. Young people who imitated the tattoos and arrogance of their football idol and who are now paying the price for their spiritual blindness in an abyss of infinite despair. Their voices cried out from the depths, begging for a second chance that would never come, and their tears evaporated before they touched the burning ground. Terror gripped my mind as I grasped the magnitude of the human tragedy that lies hidden behind a simple game turned into a world religion. The angel slowly withdrew his wings and pointed toward a horizon shrouded in thick sulfur clouds and swirling ash. He warned me that what I was about to see would shatter my heart completely because it involved the most innocent people on earth caught in the web of this false idolatry. The toxic wind slowly dissipated, revealing an immense, bleak valley covered in a thick, greenish fog that crept across the scorching ground. As the angel's light pierced that suffocating darkness, I could make out thousands of small fields of barren earth, surrounded by rusty fences and red-hot barbed wire. My heart sank in my chest as I realized that the prisoners in that camp of horror were not grown men or corrupt public figures. They were the souls of young people and children who in life had been driven to blindly worship the false god of football. They wore their small sports jerseys, now torn and stained with boiling tar that relentlessly burned their spiritual skin. The majestic angel looked at me with tears in his eyes of purifying fire and told me that the enemy deeply hates innocence and seeks any means to steal it from the cradle. I saw children forced to run barefoot on a ground strewn with broken glass and nails, chasing a ball that weighed as much as lead. Every time they tried to kick that heavy sphere of punishment, their small spiritual bones fractured, causing them unbearable pain that echoed throughout the valley of torment. And the most heartbreaking thing was that in the sharp iron stands surrounding those cursed fields sat their own parents, parents who on earth had sacrificed time going to church and reading the holy word to take their children to the stadiums every Sunday without fail. Now those same parents were chained to their seats with shackles of molten lava, forced to witness the eternal suffering of their little ones, unable to do anything at all to help them. A desperate father tried to break his bonds, shouting the name of the Supreme Creator, begging for mercy for his son, but his voice was drowned out by the roar of the guardian demons. One of these demons, with the body of a giant wolf and bat wings, approached the father and spat fire in his face, reminding him of all the times he had blasphemed over a simple game, lost. The radiant angel took my arm and led me through the fields of suffering so that I could feel the true weight of this generational tragedy. He explained to me that sports idolatry is a chain of curse passed down from parents to children when love for a jersey surpasses love for the sacrifice on the cross of Calvary. Many of these children were not to blame for being born into homes where the television was the only altar and the poster of the football idol replaced the image of heavenly purity, but in the spiritual world, the worship of false idols creates a dark bond that drags entire families into the same abyss of perdition. Suddenly, the stormy sky of the underworld lit up with a blinding, sickening flash, projecting the gigantic image of the same sports idol we had seen on the throne of chains at the beginning of our descent. The disfigured face of the famous player appeared in the sulphurous clouds, weeping tears of pain and pleading with parents to stop using his name to inspire their children. The idol screamed with a hoarse, terrified voice, saying that he was just a sinful man who didn't deserve any glory and that his talent had been a death trap for his own soul. But his lamentations only served to increase the despair in the valley, because the demons used his image to mock the futile faith of all the damned. The angel stopped me in front of a specific court where a young teenager was weeping inconsolably, clutching his burned knees. I approached, trembling, and heard the young man repeatedly murmur the same prayer his father had taught him in life, but it wasn't a prayer to the Creator of the heavens, it was a football chant praising his beloved team. His mind had been so corrupted by fanaticism that even in hell he couldn't remember the name of the Supreme Savior. The angel shed a luminous tear that, upon touching the burning ground, caused a small white flower of hope to bloom, which was quickly consumed by the infernal heat. He told me that every Sunday on earth, millions of homes become temples of profane worship, where praises are shouted to mortal men while the churches remain empty and forgotten. And if you think this is the worst that can happen, you are profoundly mistaken, because the deception goes far beyond a simple Sunday game. The angel revealed to me the secret pact that exists in the shadows of the world's great sports academies, where athletes are trained to the future idols of the masses. We were transported in a flicker of celestial light to a vast underground cavern shaped like a luxury locker room, but constructed from human bones and polished skulls. There I saw demonic entities dressed in sports executive suits signing contracts with boiling fire on black marble tables. The angel explained to me that many of the great talents the world admires today were secretly offered to the forces of darkness in exchange for worldwide fame, endless money, and superhuman abilities on the field. I saw promising young athletes kneeling before a grotesque altar where they surrendered their souls in exchange for golden trophies and million-dollar contracts, but the price of that temporary success was an eternity of slavery under the yoke of the princes of Livorno. One of the demonic executives laughed uproariously as he handed a glittering trophy to a young athlete, telling him that his fame on earth would last only a breath, but his pain in the abyss would be endless. The young man took the trophy, and immediately his hands began to melt like hot wax as he screamed in horror upon realizing the fatal deception. The angel commanded me to engrave this scene deep within my memory so that when I returned to earth, I would warn all parents not to sell their children's souls for the empty dream of athletic fame. Greed and the desire for quick riches blind families, making them believe that success in a stadium is the ultimate blessing when in reality it is the enemy's most elaborate trap to destroy the eternity of young people. We left that horrifying locker room and continued our descent through a narrow, suffocating tunnel, whose walls oozed a black, viscous liquid that smelled of pure spiritual decay. The angel warned me that we were approaching the sanctuary of the false gods, a place so unholy that the mere presence of divine light caused violent earthquakes in its dark foundations. I felt a sepulchral chill that contrasted sharply with the infernal heat of the surroundings, as if the complete absence of the Creator's love froze the very air. We arrived at a gigantic esplanade where a monstrous temple stood, its dark marble columns carved with the figures of all the famous sports idols and artists that humanity has worshipped throughout the ages. At the entrance of the temple, two gigantic four-armed demons held torches of green fire and stared at us with such profound hatred that my legs felt weak with sheer terror, but the angel stepped between them and me, raising his sword of immaculate light which unleashed a wave of celestial power, forcing the beasts to retreat and cover their deformed faces. We entered the temple of the false god, and what I saw inside left me breathless and my soul shattered into 1,000 pieces. The floor was paved with gold and silver medals that burned the feet of the souls, who were forced to walk upon them to pay homage to an immense central altar. On that altar there was not an inanimate statue, but a living monster composed of the amalgamation of thousands of faces of Earth's celebrities. This aberration fed on the energy sent to it by fanatics from the world of the living, every time they shouted their names, with exaggerated devotion. The angel explained to me that idolatry is a direct spiritual bridge that transfers the life force of the worshipper to these parasitic entities that rule the deepest regions of darkness. I saw threads of grayish light descend from the temple ceiling and connect directly a las bocas de esta creatura monstrous, strengthening it with every clap and every ovation that occurred in the mortal world at that very moment. And in the corners of this profane temple, I saw the souls of those who in life were the spiritual leaders and pastors, who instead of rebuking this idolatry, fostered it within their own congregations. They were hanging upside down over pits of boiling sulfur because they had allowed the spirit of the world to enter the churches by organizing sporting tournaments instead of prayer vigils. The angel looked at me sternly and told me that the judgment upon those who knew the truth and did not warn the flock is 7 times more painful than the punishment of the ignorant. A pastor I had known in life pleaded from his torment, saying he only wanted to attract young people to the church using football as a harmless hook, but he never imagined he would end up surrendering the altar to the god of entertainment. The angel responded with a voice of thunder, saying that the gospel does not need the help of idols of clay to transform hearts, and that mixing the holy with the profane is an unforgivable abomination in the eyes of the Supreme Creator. The entire temple began to shake violently as the 1,000-faced creature let out a deafening howl upon feeling the purifying presence of the angel of radiant light beside me. The angel spread his immense white wings, creating a shield of celestial energy that protected us from the flaming debris that began to fall from the ceiling of that cursed sanctuary. He indicated to me that our mission at that level of the abyss had concluded, but that the final revelation I was about to witness would seal the fate of millions of souls if I did not urgently deliver this message to humanity. He took my hand, and we were sucked into a whirlwind of golden light that lifted us above the collapsing temple, leaving me with a feeling of immense spiritual vertigo and a profound sadness for the countless people deceived by empty fame. And as we ascended through the dizzying tunnel, he warned me that the most terrifying level was yet to come, the place where souls discover the true origin of corrupted human talent. We ascended through the dizzying tunnel of golden light, while the echoes of the destruction of the profane temple slowly faded beneath our bare feet. The radiant angel held me with unwavering divine strength as we crossed barriers of darkness so dense they seemed made of solid, cold stone. Suddenly, our flight came to an abrupt halt, and my feet touched a rusty iron floor that vibrated constantly with a terrifying, mechanical hum that pierced to my bones. I opened my eyes, trembling with fear, and found myself in the very heart of the underworld, in a ghastly place the angel called the Great Forge of Human Vanity. The heat at this level did not come from a blazing fire that would scorch physical skin, but from a dark, suffocating radiation that withered the spirit and dried up any trace of hope. In my heart, heaven simply did not exist in this unfathomable depth. I could only see an immense vault covered with metal gears, gigantic and thick, lashed chains that moved without stopping, losing themselves in the infinite gloom. The sound of millions of hammer blows resonated in unison, creating a funeral march that deafened my earthly ears. The angel indicated with a solemn gesture that I should look towards the horizon where thousands of artificial volcanoes spewed a black and sticky substance instead of natural lava, and pay close attention to what my eyes saw next, for you will understand where those sporting fads your children imitate with such devotion truly come from, and why the enemy invests so much effort in modern stadiums. I approached the edge of a metal precipice and looked down where an untold multitude of blacksmith demons with coal-skinned skin and yellow eyes toiled frenetically at immense anvils of red-hot bronze. These infernal creatures did not forge swords or shields of war, but molded human arrogance and pride, giving them attractive and glittering shapes to deceive the inhabitants of Earth. I saw them take that black and sticky substance that dripped from volcanoes and mix it with the sweat of tormented souls to create immense, gleaming trophies and medals of fake gold. The angel explained to me in a deep voice that dark substance was the envy and greed distilled from the hearts of millions of sports fans who crave the fame of others. Whenever a fan on Earth feels hatred for the rival team or envy for the wealth of a famous player, a drop of this spiritual poison falls into the forge of vanity, fueling the production of more idols of clay. I saw a gigantic demon with muscular arms like steel trunks hammering an anvil from which sparks flew, taking the form of expensive sneakers and limited edition t-shirts. The demon breathed a toxic scent onto these garments, and they were immediately imbued with a spell of visual seduction designed specifically to ensnare the minds of vulnerable young people. The angel of pure light looked at me with deep compassion, and he told me that the creator of the heavens designed the human body for movement and health, blessing many with agility and physical prowess for their well-being, but the enemy, in his infinite wickedness, corrupted this sacred gift, transforming sport into a global religion, where healthy competition was replaced by a sick and violent worship. I felt a sharp pain in my chest as I recalled the countless hours I myself spent standing in front of shop windows, wanting to buy the exact jersey my football idol wore, completely ignoring the needs of my own family. We walked along a narrow walkway suspended over this industrial chasm, while the suffocating smoke from the forge tried to cloud my vision, but the luminous presence of my celestial guide kept the air clean around me. We reached an area where the noise of the hammers diminished and was replaced by a constant murmur and desperate, like the sound of a raging ocean in the midst of a night storm. The angel led me to the bank of an immense, murky river that crossed the entire plain of rusted iron, its gray, heavy waters moving with agonizing slowness. I leaned forward slightly and realized with true horror that this river was not composed of natural water, but of millions of translucent spheres containing moving images. Each tiny sphere represented the exact seconds, minutes, and hours that human beings had wasted on Earth consuming empty entertainment and debating sports statistics instead of seeking salvation for their souls. The angel revealed to me that this was the dreaded river of lost time, a place where the souls of those who allowed their entire lives to slip through their fingers are cast, worshipping false gods of the court. Within the grey waters, I saw countless multitudes drowning and desperately struggling to stay afloat, but the weight of their own negligence mercilessly pulled them down to the muddy bottom. I saw mature men and women weeping bitterly as they tried to grasp those translucent spheres, pleading for just one Sunday of their earthly lives so they could attend church and genuinely repent of their sins, but the spheres shattered in their hands, releasing black smoke that burned their faces and served as a constant reminder of the frivolity of their past choices. An old man sinking near the shore stretched his skeletal hand toward me and in a rasping voice begged me to tell his grandchildren to turn off the television and open the Holy Scriptures, because time on earth is a sacred resource that can never be bought back, not even with all the gold in the world. Sadness overwhelmed me so much that my knees trembled, and I had to lean on the angel's shining arm to keep from fainting from such agony and regret. It burned. The angel held me firmly and told me that the greatest victory of the enemy of souls was not convincing the world to do obvious evil, but deceiving millions into believing that wasting their time worshipping sports idols is completely harmless and normal. He explained that every shout of goal, every insult hurled at a referee, and every tear shed over a lost championship is spiritual energy that the forces of darkness collect to strengthen their dominion and further oppress humanity. The landscape began to transform around us as we walked along the course of that dreadful river. The immense machinery of the forge gave way to a desert-like terrain covered in white dust that resembled crushed bone. In the distance rose a colossal structure that defied all architectural understanding, an immense stadium that floated in the air, held aloft by thick columns of black smoke and reddish lightning. The angel indicated that this place was known as the Great Dome of False Comfort, the final resting place for the souls of the most extreme fans, those who literally killed or died defending the colors of their favorite team. As we drew closer, I could hear the deafening sound of war drums and tribal chants that expressed not joy, but a blind fury and irrational hatred that froze the blood in my spiritual veins. And desperate, like the sound of a raging ocean in the midst of a night storm, the angel led me to the bank of an immense, murky river that crossed the entire plain of rusted iron, its gray, heavy waters moving with agonizing slowness. I leaned forward slightly and realized with true horror that this river was not composed of natural water, but of millions of translucent spheres containing moving images. Each tiny sphere represented the exact seconds,